When you hear the words Oregon Trail, what do you think of? Probably that old computer game, right? Or maybe you picture this grand adventure, brave pioneers conquering the Wild West. But what if I told you the real story was darker, a whole lot more grueling and honestly way more interesting? Well, that's the story we're about to uncover.
Yeah, Hollywood gives us this epic, romantic version. But the reality for the 500,000 people who actually made this journey, it was less about conquering anything and more about just surviving. We're talking 2,000 miles of pure misery. The kind of stuff you never see in the movies, like endless, knee-deep mud and diseases like dysentery.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It was a brutal, almost insane undertaking. So to really understand why on Earth 500,000 people would put themselves through this, we're going to follow the story of one family who bet absolutely everything on the promise of a better life.
Okay, so our story kicks off right here, Independence, Missouri. This was the big jumping-off point for pretty much everyone heading west. And we're going to follow a young guy named Thomas Benton and his family. For them, and for so many others, this isn't some grand adventure. It's a desperate gamble.
So what was the big pull? What made them do it? What was the promise of free land? 160 acres of it. Now, to you and me, that might just be a number. But for these families, that was more land than they could ever dream of owning. It was this powerful, life-changing idea that made them risk it all.
And let's clear up a big misconception right here. People weren't rolling out in those massive, heavy Conestoga wagons you see in the movies. Nope. They were using much humbler vehicles, basically just their regular farm wagons with a canvas cover, which is where they got the name Prairie Schooners, and they were pulled by oxen. Slower than horses for sure, but way more durable for that long, brutal haul.
And the stakes were laid out crystal clear from day one. This is what the wagon master, Mr. Davidson, told the 430 souls in his train. He didn't sugarcoat it one bit. This was a life or death journey, and every single person knew it before they even took that first step. So once the journey began, life wasn't a series of dramatic, exciting events. It was a grind, a relentless, monotonous, back-breaking grind, punctuated by these moments of just sheer terror. It was a daily battle against the weather, the landscape, and their own bodies.
Just look at this schedule. This was their entire existence for 6 months straight. Up before the sun, on the trail by 7, walking all day long, and then making camp at dusk. There were no weekends, no days off, just this grueling, repetitive cycle, over and over. Can you even imagine the physical and mental toll of that?
And their progress was just agonizingly slow. We're talking about 2 miles per hour on a good day. It took them 3 full months just to get to Fort Laramie. By September, they were only at Independence Rock, and that was a huge problem. They were supposed to be there by July 4th to beat the winter snows. They were already dangerously behind schedule.
The biggest threats out there weren't what you'd expect. More pioneers died from disease and accidents than from anything else. Things like cholera and measles just swept through the camps. A simple broken bone could be a death sentence. The trail itself became this kind of graveyard of abandoned hopes, just strewn with furniture, pianos, even entire wagons from people who just couldn't go on.
For Thomas and his family, that first real taste of terror came at a river crossing. They were floating the wagons across on these rickety makeshift rafts. The Jenkins family was about halfway across when everything went wrong. The raft, caught in the current, just started to tilt.
And in an instant, the wagon, which held everything that family owned, it just slid off the raft and plunged into the raging, icy water, pulling the family down with it. It was pure chaos and horror on the riverbank.
The family came up, gasping for air, but their little girl, Emma, was gone, swept away by the current. And then, downstream, a small hand broke the surface. She was snagged on a branch, her head barely above water, and she was going under.
And this is the moment our protagonist, Thomas, completely changes. He's just a teenager, but without a second thought, he dives into that freezing river. He fights the current, he gets to Emma just as she slips under, and he pulls her back to shore. It was this incredible flash of heroism in the middle of a total nightmare. But their greatest test was still to come. Month behind schedule, they finally made it to the Blue Mountains, the last major hurdle. And that is when their luck and their hope finally ran out. An early, brutal winter storm just slammed into them.
Within a single day, the trail was buried under 2 feet of snow. They were trapped. Their animals were starving, their supplies were practically gone, and people were starting to get really sick from the cold and the hunger. They were completely and totally cut off from the world.
So just for a second, put yourself in their shoes. You've traveled almost 2,000 miles. Your family is sick, you are out of food, you are stranded in a blizzard in the middle of the mountains. Help is weeks away, if it can even get through. What do?
Faced with this completely impossible situation, they came up with a desperate, high-stakes plan. It was a final, frozen push. It was a race against time, a race against starvation, and a race against that relentless winter.
They made the gut-wrenching decision to split the train. An advance party, made up of the healthiest people with the strongest animals, would try to push ahead through the snow to get help. Everyone else, the sick and the weak, including Thomas's sister Sarah, would stay behind, rationing what little food they had left and just pray that help arrived in time.
And miraculously, the plan actually worked. The advance party, against all odds, made it through the mountains to a trading post. A relief party was immediately sent back with supplies. They evacuated the sickest people first, including Sarah, and then they guided the rest of the wagons through that treacherous, frozen landscape. But even then, they weren't done. The final leg of their journey wasn't by wagon at all. It was this terrifying trip down the massive, powerful Columbia River on rafts, fighting through dangerous rapids to finally reach the promised land of the Willamette Valley.
After 6 months, 2,000 miles, and just unimaginable loss and hardship, the Benton family and what was left of their wagon train finally arrived. They had made it, but after everything they went through, the question still hangs in the air. Was it worth it?
And the answer comes from Sarah, the little sister whom nearly died in those mountains. Standing on a hill, looking out over their new 640-acre claim in this beautiful, lush valley, she gives the final verdict. For her, for them, the promise was real, and the sacrifice, as terrible as it was worth it. And that really leaves us with one last thought. The story of these pioneers is one of incredible desperation, but also incredible hope. It's about people willing to endure the unimaginable for a chance at a new beginning. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What dream, what new beginning would you be willing to risk it all for?